الحمد لله الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم وأرسل إلينا رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أما بعد، فقد أرشدنا الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. وفي آية أخرى: نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن. صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in these two verses in Surah Yusuf, in the first verse that I mentioned, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. He mentions that really we have revealed an Arabic Quran to you so that you may understand. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the following verse, He says that نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, that we have related to you the fairest of the stories of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? Fairest of the stories of Yusuf alayhi salam, of which we have revealed in this Quran. Now, I just want you guys to imagine, right? Imagine a scenario where a person is coming and he asks, for example, me in this case, where he asks, Brother Abdullah, this Ramadan that's coming up right now, I really want to change myself. I have this resolution that the past Ramadans, I don't know what happened there, but I want to change myself. And I know I'm supposed to read the entire Quran. I know I'm supposed to read the meanings of the entire Quran. Give me one surah at least to focus on. Practically speaking, one surah to focus on. What surah that would be? And I would tell that person that, you should focus on Surah Yusuf. You should focus on Surah Yusuf. And the reason for that is because Surah Yusuf, the format of Surah Yusuf is it's really interesting, because no matter what level you are in the sense of your dini knowledge, what level you are, whether you're a beginner or intermediate or advanced, the interesting thing about Surah Yusuf is that from the beginning till the end, it's in the story format. It's very easy to follow. And the individuals, for example, the interactions between Yusuf and his father, and the interactions between Yusuf alayhi salam and the Ashabu Sijin, the interactions between him and his brothers. These interactions, it's interesting because you can gain so much hikam, you can gain so much wisdoms from these interactions. It's really interesting. And that's why in this khutbah, I'm going to be talking about 3 things that I thought was really interesting that I picked up. There's so many things already in Surah Yusuf that I don't think I can cover it in 20 minutes, but the 3 things that I would like to address are, the first thing is language. Okay? Second thing is media, right? Social media, TV media, radio media, whatever media it is. And then the third and final point that I'm going to be talking about is self-promotion, right? That is being addressed in Surah Yusuf. So the first point, which is language, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the second verse, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا, right? That we have revealed this Quran in the Arabic form, so that you guys may understand. Right? Some Mufassirun say that Arabian actually means wadihan, fasihan, that it's an eloquent. It doesn't necessarily mean Arabic, but it means in a language where everyone can understand. However, majority of the Mufassirun say that it is Arabic. And if you see society, if you see countries and society, their foundation, the fabric of society's, fabric is their language. So when you identify with a certain country, when you identify with a certain people, a group of people, for example, when we talk about China, right? People in China speak Chinese, people in Japan speak Japanese, people in Portugal speak Portuguese, right? That's how you identify a society. And in order to, for example, dismantle or deconstruct a society, you take away that language, you take it away from the people. And that's what happened exactly when the East English India Company came to India, right? One of the things that occurred was the reinstitutionalizing, reprogramming of the masses, bringing up new institutions, teaching them secular sciences, teaching them English, removing them away from eventually the Quran, but from Arabic and all of these languages, right? Which similarly happened in Turkey as well. In 1914, one of the most tragic things that happened to the in Muslim history was the fall or the downfall of the Ottoman Empire and the coming of the Republic of Turkey. One of the first presidents, his name was Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and one of the many things that he carried out, he did a lot of things, but one of the many things that he carried out was the eradication of the Arabic language, right? He removed it completely and he had a secular agenda, and he moved that forward, he promoted that, especially in institutions and in schools and such of that. That's where he implemented, so much so that it was illegal in Turkey to recite the adhan in Arabic, that it was supposed to be done in Turkish, right? And you can, if you see, I don't know how many of you guys went to Turkey, but if you see the Blue Mosque, the writing of Turkish is like Urdu writing. It's not how you see today, like how it's like English with the accents and the two nuktas, I don't know what you call those dots. It's not like it. It's not like that. It was like Urdu. And you can see traces of that. The reason, and the question can arise, why am I talking about language? What relevance does that happen? I mean, the relevance is that we see the consequence right now. A lot of, we hear stories, crazy stories, how Muslim, especially my generation and younger than me, I guess they're called Generation Z. The younger generation, what's going on is they can't really relate to the Quran and can't really relate to the Sunnah. There's sort of a disconnection between that, and eventually what happens is that they start losing faith. They start losing faith, or another act or reactionary response is they start to reform Islam. They start to rethink it, rebuild it. And we see that right now, like progressive Muslims, progressive modern Muslims, trying to be inclusive as much as possible, been things you're not supposed to be inclusive about, right? We see that right now, and that's the consequence we're seeing. That was the point about language, just to bring awareness. The second point is about media, right? And I'm going to really stress about social media because I'm actually kind of involved. I actually give like weekly advices and stuff like that. But before I get to that topic, I want to go back to Surah Yusuf, where the first interaction that Yusuf has with his father is that he goes to his father and he tells his father, and this is when he was small, he goes to his father and he tells him, Ya abati, inni ra'aytu ahada ashra kawkaba, wa shamsa wal qamara ra'aytuhum lisajidin. He says, oh my father, my beloved father, I saw 11 celestial bodies. I saw the sun and the moon bowing or prostrating towards me in my dream. And Yaqub alayhi salam, he knew this. He knew the interpretation of this. And what was really interesting is what he said afterwards in that ayah. What he said afterwards is that Ya bunayya la taqsus ru'yaka ala ikhwatik. That, oh my child, do not relate this information, do not relate this vision of yours to your brothers, right? Why shouldn't you relate this? And then afterwards he tells him the reason. That they might despise or plot against something towards you. And it's interesting because, nowadays, everyone, especially, I don't know about the older generation, but the younger generation, it's all about, you want to showcase your happiness. You want to showcase your whatever good that's happening in your life, which is good. For example, if you had a child and you want to receive du'as and all of that stuff. I'm not saying don't do it, but to be real, in this verse, what's really interesting is that not everyone is really good-natured. Not everyone wants to do kumbaya with you, right? Not everyone wants to hold your hands and shake your hands and hug you. That's not how everyone works. And Yaqub alayhi salam kind of stresses, even your brothers can plot against you. Even your brothers. People who are really close to you, they can plot against you. And there's so many scenarios where family members are eating each other up. Family members are abusing one another. They're going into courts trying to extract money from one another. These are real scenarios. And the point that I'm trying to make is, let's not be naive here, right? Let's not be naive. Let's not think that there aren't bad people out here, right? Obviously, with the machinations of shaitan, I'm not saying that, shaitan doesn't have a part in it. Shaitan has a part in it, but our job is to recognize, our job is to be aware, our job is to prevent ourselves from getting ourselves being duped, being tricked, and all of these things. And social media is like that, right? You post things about like how you graduated, or you got married, or you got all these good things that are happening in your life, but suddenly something shifts, right? Suddenly, like, your life is in crumbles. And why is that, right? Someone out there maybe who liked your picture from Australia has some sort of ain or some sort of hasad against you, because it breeds hasad, right? It breeds some sort of negative inclinations towards you, even though you guys have never met. These are things that are very dangerous when it comes to social media, right? Another thing that also happens in social media is that there's so much misinformation, misrepresentation that occurs. So many layani things that happen, things that are not necessary for us to know about, right? Like, for example, there's always like, amongst Muslims, I'm not even talking about non-Muslims, amongst Muslims, there's always like someone trying to attack another individual, saying false rumors about another individual. And one hadith that I would love to relay and talk about in terms of these things is when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la yani," that the best form of Islam is for those people to leave what doesn't concern him or her, right? And obviously, okay, there are circumstances where you need to take a stand, you need to butt in, right? You need to get in and try to alleviate the situation. But normally the case is that try to leave it out unless the situation demands for it, right? If the situation doesn't demand for it, it's going to be taken care of by itself, then, leave it. It doesn't matter, right? And you see this a lot in social media. The third point I wanted to talk about is self-promotion. This one it's very tricky because, self-promotion, you're not supposed to overdo it, but sometimes the situation demands for it. So what happened, going back to Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, this is an interaction between him and the king, right? So there's a whole scenario where the king, had to solve the problem between the wife of Aziz and the case with Yusuf alayhi salam. So that was dealt with. So then came the point where the king asked Yusuf alayhi salam, what do you need? Right? So Yusuf alayhi salam told the king that Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard, make me a minister upon the treasures of the world. Make me responsible upon the rations and the crops and all of these things that Egypt had, right? Because in the coming months, Egypt was going to go through a depression. Egypt was going through a drought, right? And in fact, it did go through a drought, but it was one of the providers. It was the main exporters of food, right? Actually, a lot of people came to Egypt and tried to extract food from Egypt because of the proficiency, the prowess of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? I mean, the reason why self-promotion, I want to talk about that is because sometimes we have, we all want to be, tawadu, there's humility, there's humbleness, right? When you don't want to speak in front of people because there are better people that can speak, for example, right? But there's sometimes a case or situation where not everyone is qualified, right? And you're probably the only person who knows more than the other individual sitting next to you. And that situation that situation demands a leader. That situation demands for a person who can take up that responsibility, which goes to another topic, which is taking initiative. And so I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, I can't speak for the older generation, but for the younger generation, I've seen something that's very common, and they're very passive. They're very, very passive. So whether you're in college, whether you're in school, they don't really want to engage. They're already plugged in, and they're just like, let me just go through life and get a 6K figure, whatever 6K a lot, I don't know. But let me get that, and it's not a lot. Okay, a 6-figure income, that's what I'm talking about. 6-figure income. Let me get that. Let me get married. Do my thing and live my life. Leave me alone. Why are you bothering me about all of these things? That's what they are. That's what they're talking about these days, right? And it's sad because you want them to, and these are the generation after us. These are the generations that they're going to represent us. They're going to be the ambassadors. These are going to be the people who will take care of us when we're old. And seeing them in a very passive state is, in a way, it's kind of debilitating to your confidence, because you kind of want them to take up that stand when, the future is very unknown. Right? The future that's coming right now, it's unknown, and it calls for a lot of leadership amongst Muslims, especially in terms of science and technology, in terms of economics, in terms of medicine. A lot of things are taking place. For example, not too long ago, I think recently, Saudi Arabia gave citizenship to one of the first female robots. I don't know her name, maybe Lisa or something. They gave citizenship to a robot, and then the Department of U.S. Defense, they're funding this company called Boston Dynamics, right? This is a company, I think it's owned by Google, I'm not too sure. Google? Okay, so thank you. They're owned by Google or whatever, and this is a company, basically they're focusing on robotics, and they're creating new robots like every year. They're trying to improve on that, right? Right now they have like some dogs or something like that. It's interesting, you should see some YouTube videos. But that's what's happening right now, and eventually, I'm going to sound like a crazy person, but eventually it's going to get to a point where, we're going to have robot workers, we're going to have robot servants, we're going to have robots taking groceries, dropping off our kids, everything of that sort. That's why one of the things that was interesting in the 2020 election was what Andrew Lang said. He was talking about, I'm forgetting the term, but he was talking about universal income, where eventually everyone doesn't need a job, everyone is going to get a regular stipend, because robots are going to take care of all the hard work, the manual labor. It's all going to be done for us. So these are interesting things that are happening in today's time right now, and I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. It's going to be even crazier. And it's, the point I want to make is that be aware, be very, very critical, don't be passive, be really receptive. And the most important thing is don't be complacent, because I know a lot of us right now are complacent where we are with our jobs and our income and everything, but things can go out of hand in a matter of seconds. And that's why I want to end it on the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says beautifully in a very small statement, "Kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharibun aw 'abiru sabilin." That be in this world as if you were a stranger or a traveler. The point I want to try to say is that let's not try to make this our permanent abode. This is not our permanent abode, and anything can happen in any minute. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Prayer sunnah. Assalamu alaikum. Few announcements. Tomorrow here at MSI, we have Sheikh Hassan Ali from UK give a bayan on the temptations of the dunya. Please attend. We also have next Friday after Maghrib, we have the Ramadan prep program. Mufti Hisham will be talking on the virtues and fiqh of fasting. Also tomorrow at ICW, volunteers will be packing the food that we collected during the food drive from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Please participate and help them out on the packing. And also Darussalam has their annual retreat this weekend, starting from Maghrib tonight till Asr on Sunday. Please benefit from the programs that you can attend. Also, ICWS has their fundraising in Ramadan tomorrow. Please participate and donate as much as you can. Jazakallah khair. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح